2:25 a.m. Los Angeles, February 25, 1942. A city of 3 million people woke up to the sound of anti-aircraft guns firing into the night sky. By morning, the U.S. government had no explanation. To understand what happened over Los Angeles, you need to understand what America felt like in February of 1942. It had been less than 3 months since Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941, a Sunday morning. A U.S. naval base in Hawaii obliterated in under 2 hours. 2,403 Americans killed, 19 ships damaged or destroyed, and the attack came without warning. The shock wasn't just grief, it was the realization that the United States was not untouchable. For the first time in living memory, the American mainland felt exposed, and nowhere felt more exposed than the West Coast. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, major cities, major ports, major military infrastructure, all of them sitting right there on the edge of the Pacific Ocean, the same ocean Japan controlled. Within days of Pearl Harbor, blackout drills began up and down the coast. Air raid wardens were appointed. People were told to tape their windows, turn off their lights, keep their curtains closed after dark. The question wasn't if Japan would attack the mainland. For millions of people on the West Coast, it was when. If you're into stories like this, real events that history glossed over, subscribe. We're just getting started. On February 23, 1942, just 2 days before the incident, a Japanese submarine surfaced off the coast of Santa Barbara. It fired shells at an oil refinery near Elwood, California. The damage was minor, but the message was not. Japan had just attacked the American mainland, on American soil. President Roosevelt addressed the nation in one of his famous fireside chats that same night. Across the country, people gathered around radios, listening to the president speak while the West Coast braced itself. Military commanders along the Pacific coast were on the highest alert. Soldiers, anti-aircraft batteries, radar stations, all of them waiting, all of them watching the sky. So when the alarm went off, just after midnight on February 25th, nobody hesitated. People ran into the streets, not out of curiosity, out of terror. Weeks earlier, Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor. The West Coast wasn't calm, it was waiting for what came next. And now, the sky above Los Angeles was on fire. Searchlights swept across the darkness, hundreds of them, crisscrossing the sky over the city. Air raid sirens screamed across every neighborhood. Wardens ran through the streets shouting at people to get inside, to turn off their lights, to get to shelter. But people didn't go inside. They stood on their porches, they climbed onto rooftops. They stared upward at the beams of white light cutting through the dark, and some of them saw something. The military didn't hesitate. 1,440 anti-aircraft shells fired in under an hour. Searchlights locked onto something, multiple gun batteries across the entire city, tracking the same target. This wasn't random fire. This was coordinated. The 37th Coast Artillery Brigade went to full battle condition at 2:21 a.m. A blackout was ordered across the region. By 3:16 a.m., the guns were still firing. Anti-aircraft crews reported tracking a slow-moving object at various altitudes. Some reports said 9,000 feet. Others said 18,000 feet. The object, whatever it was, appeared to be moving from Santa Monica toward Long Beach, and the entire military apparatus of one of America's largest cities was trying to bring it down. Nothing came down, no wreckage, no debris, no bodies, no aircraft. The Army said weather balloon. The Navy said no balloon was ever in the sky. The Secretary of the Navy called it a case of war nerves. But here's the problem. You don't fire 1,400 shells at nerves. Think about what a coordinated anti-aircraft response actually requires. You need radar contact. You need multiple operators at multiple stations confirming the same target. You need officers signing off on the order to open fire. All of that happened. And at the end of it, the official position was nothing was there. The Army and Navy couldn't even agree with each other. Secretary of War Henry Stimson suggested it might have been commercial aircraft used by enemy agents to cause panic. The Navy's Frank Knox said there were no aircraft at all, that it was a false alarm. War nerves, mass hysteria. Two cabinet-level officials, two completely different stories, told to the public within hours of each other. Two officials, two stories, no explanation. If you want more stories like this, the ones that don't add up, hit subscribe and leave a comment below. What do you think was in that sky? Witnesses described a slow-moving object, massive, silent, moving through the searchlight beams without being hit, without changing speed, without reacting at all. One witness, a 25-year-old air raid warden stationed near Culver City, described a large round object illuminated by at least a dozen searchlights, moving steadily through the sky as shells burst around it. He said it never wavered, never accelerated, never changed course. Other witnesses described smaller objects around it, some moving fast, some hovering. A reporter for the Los Angeles Times who was out covering the blackout wrote that he saw something, clearly illuminated in the searchlights, something that moved with deliberate, unhurried direction through the barrage. 3 people died that night from heart attacks caused by the panic. 2 more died in accidents during the blackout, and the object disappeared. By dawn, the guns had gone silent. Los Angeles woke up to shattered windows, fallen shell casings in the streets, cars damaged by shrapnel, buildings with holes in their roofs, not from enemy fire, from their own anti-aircraft shells raining back down on the city. Newspapers ran banner headlines. L.A. area raided. Los Angeles Times. Alarm real? Others insisted. People wanted answers. At a press conference that morning, Secretary of the Navy, Frank Knox, stood before reporters and said, "There were no enemy aircraft. None." Reporters pushed back immediately. They had been out in the city. They had seen the searchlights, heard the guns, seen the object. Knox didn't budge. That afternoon, the Army released a statement saying it may have been a weather balloon that triggered the initial response, and the jittery gun crews simply escalated from there. 1 weather balloon, 1,440 shells. The official explanation shifted 3 times in 24 hours. First, Japanese aircraft, then weather balloon, then mass hysteria. In 1983, the U.S. Office of Air Force History re-examined the case. Their conclusion? Unidentified. 40 years later. And that's the best answer they had. Think about what that means. This wasn't a campfire story. This wasn't a farmer in a field saying he saw lights in the sky. This was a full military engagement. Documented, logged, reported up the chain of command. With shell expenditure records, with radar logs, with eyewitness accounts from military personnel. And the official conclusion, after 4 decades of access to those records, was unidentified. So, what was it? 3 theories have dominated the decades of debate. Theory 1, Japanese aircraft or balloon. This was the original military explanation. Japan did have balloon bomb programs, the Fugo weapons, where explosive balloons were sent across the Pacific on wind currents. But those came later, 1944 and 1945. In February 1942, Japan had not yet deployed any such weapons over the American mainland, and Japanese military records, examined after the war, show no aircraft mission over Los Angeles that night. No submarine launch, no balloon deployment. Japan, it seems, was just as confused about the Battle of Los Angeles as America was. This is the official U.S. government position. Jittery soldiers, nervous civilians, a city traumatized by Pearl Harbor, primed to see enemies everywhere. Someone sees a weather balloon, a flare, a stray aircraft, and the whole thing spirals. It's a reasonable theory. Humans, under extreme stress, do see things that aren't there, but it doesn't explain the coordinated gun batteries, the radar contacts, the multiple independent witnesses describing the same object in the same location. It doesn't explain why trained military radar operators confirmed a target. This is where the story takes a turn that official reports don't like to address. Some of the witnesses that night were not panicked civilians. They were military personnel, air raid wardens, trained observers, and several of them described something that didn't match any known aircraft of that era. Too slow to be a fighter plane, too large to be a balloon, silent, where any engine-powered aircraft of that size would have been deafening. The UFO theory has always been part of the Battle of Los Angeles story. In 1983, when the Office of Air Force History declared the case unidentified, it didn't help dismiss those theories. If anything, it gave them new oxygen. Here's what makes the Battle of Los Angeles more than just a wartime mystery. It happened in public, over one of the most populated cities in America, witnessed by hundreds of thousands of people, responded to by the full military apparatus of the United States, and it was never explained. Not convincingly, not consistently. The official statements contradicted each other within hours. The explanations changed 3 times, and the definitive government review, conducted decades later, with access to all the records, could only say, unidentified. There's a pattern here that shows up again and again in cases like this. Not necessarily a pattern of aliens, but a pattern of institutional confusion, of agencies that don't talk to each other, of explanations assembled after the fact, of a government more concerned with maintaining public confidence than with telling a coherent story. Whether that's reassuring or alarming probably depends on who you are. Here's what we know for certain. The U.S. military fired over 1,400 shells over one of America's largest cities. It was tracked. It was targeted. It was witnessed by hundreds of thousands of people. 2 cabinet officials gave contradictory accounts within hours of each other. The explanation changed 3 times in one day. And 40 years later, the best answer the U.S. government could produce was a single word: unidentified. Whatever was in the sky that night over Los Angeles triggered a full military response and then disappeared without a trace. That's the Battle of Los Angeles, a story the government never fully explained and probably never will. If this video made you think, drop a comment below. What do you think was up there that night? And if you want more stories like this, events that don't add up, answers that never came, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.